What's up, Warriors, and welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Movement Podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I am your host, Chris. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster these last couple weeks. I just kind of took a break since I've been doing nothing but grinding and doing podcasts since I came back from vacation in North Carolina. I've been networking with people. I have actually had a meeting with my job about possibly doing a podcast that would be on a global status. So I'm pretty excited for that. Has some amazing guests lined up. Still trying to get more people on. And by the time this episode comes out, it will be for men's mental health. So I'm going to read a quick quote before I bring in today's guest, just because I feel like this is one of those subjects I have probably drilled into the format of my podcast every single time they come out. So I just want to give a shout out to all the men going through a lot with no one to turn to because this world wrongly taught men to mask their emotions. And, for me, you guys know my story by now. And it's to a point where society still feels the need to tell guys to man up, tell them not to show their emotions, tell them that being a man is the right thing opposed to, showing that you're a human being with emotions. With that being said, about a year ago, I had recorded with a gentleman by the name of Matt. We did a podcast talking about his journey, his healing journey, and everything that he's gone through. We got together and wanted to record another one for, a year since our last episode. So again, please help me re-welcome Matt Cameron, who is also the host of Matty C Sports podcast. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing good, man. I just want to thank you again for coming on the podcast. I felt like our last session together was really good, and I just want to hear your progression since we talked last. Starting with the obvious. How's the podcast going for you? Are you finding positive strides? Are you finding your niche in your audience? How's it going for you?
Uh, can I turn my camera?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, my podcast is going well. Still haven't had any problems with any guests. I've been in the MMA world and the boxing world right now. I did take a break for like 2 weeks just because, like we discussed earlier, mental health happens every day. It doesn't go away. You have good days and bad, just like any normal person. Some are more intense, but other than that, the podcast was great. And nothing but happiness with that. So I think with you, and then the next day that'll be 3 people in 3 days. So can't complain.
Yeah, those back-to-back days definitely get it takes a lot out of you, man. you know, I always say to people that follow me or anybody in my immediate circle that, I don't think people appreciate nearly as much as you and I do, or any other podcast for that matter, how much we put into our communities, and especially mental health communities.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I'm not saying my podcast is more important than yours by any means, but um by what I mean is, it's so hard to push that message of everybody's mental health should matter as much as the next person. It shouldn't be this community is more important than that. This community is more important than that, and that's how I feel like social media as a whole kind of plays sides with people. It's, men's mental health matters. No, women's mental health matters. Oh, well, one side can't matter without the other. And I'm just sitting here like, why can't we all just matter? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it's exhausting at times. Like I said at the beginning, I took a 2 week break because I was just nonstop trying to put out content just to make sure I'm on top of it, not falling behind. And I was telling my buddy Sean that I hit a wall like really hard, and
Mm.
I wasn't networking with people as much as I was when I first got back to Florida. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. And I'm trying so hard to build this brand, to build the podcast, to build the Facebook group and everything. And it gets hard, man. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for you, like you said, mental health struggles are not just when we pick and choose to have them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
it's every day, whether it's when we wake up, our problems are there to meet us right when we wake up, or for us overthinkers, um, it's there when you try to go to sleep. And I wish that was something a lot more people understood, because I feel like people will just throw around the word depressed and say, oh, well, I'm depressed, and people mistaken the word depressed and sad, because I feel like they're two completely different things. I can sit here and smile the whole time and tell you that I'm not depressed, but you and I know that's not the case. Depression looks so many different ways. Sad is
Mm-hmm.
sad. You know what I mean?
I agree with you, man. I mean, honestly, like I agree with you with the depression thing. If you're truly and honestly depressed, or you have anxiety or bipolar or whatever, you're not throwing it in the air. Like you're not like, well, I'm depressed. Like you said, you can put on that happy face all you want.
Right.
You're depressed. And I mean, you could tell like your girlfriend, your wife, partner, whatever. You can tell them because they know. But if it comes down to the nitty gritty, like that's now a focused word where it's like
It's
to
almost
the
lost
case
its
of
meaning.
like I don't. It's kind of to the case where it's like I don't feel good. It's now a new thing. Like I'm depressed.
Yep.
Well, if you really are, like there's steps to this shit. Like it's like, okay, so you feel depressed? Okay, go see somebody. Okay, go do this and go do that. It's like a 5-step plan. It's a lot. And it's a lot of, like you said, you hit a wall, and I understand that. And I did too in my 2 weeks as well. And actually this morning I woke up and I forgot to take my night medicine, and I felt it for that when I first woke up. Like I was like, I don't feel right. So I looked and I didn't take it. Then I took my morning dose, and I was a little bit shaky for like an hour or so, and then I was back to where I needed to be.
Right.
But like people don't understand, like, hey, like don't use that word and just throw it out there. Use it
Yeah.
to what it really is. And there was a thing that happened Friday. I work for a school, so a kid said something to a girl, and he said, "Why don't you just go and kill yourself?" And I said,
Jesus.
I said, hey, don't ever use those words in front of me again, first of all. And second of all, that's a very serious thing to say. So you need to watch your words, because you could have
Especially
hurt
now.
that girl's feelings. Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially high school kids. They may not think that that's a serious thing, but it is, especially with teenage kids. It's a real problem in schools.
Right. And a couple weeks ago when I was recording with one of my guests, Reese, I read statistics that NAMI, they update the numbers on, suicide rate, and, just like the number one, number two killer in, whatever age group. And the number two cause of death for ages 10 to 14 is suicide.
Wow.
That turns my stomach.
It does.
And,
Yeah. Now that you told me that.
and the fact that we have kids just, casually saying that. And obviously they're kids, they hear what they hear from adults, the people that are supposed to be their role models and stuff, right? And shit, even some of these movies and cartoons say crazy shit like that and are just
Mm-hmm.
so emotionally unaware of the damage that they can cause. Like I'm not gonna lie to you and say that I've never said, oh, I'm gonna kill myself, not meaning it the way that, it's meant to be. But that's also a coping mechanism for me, as like, that dark humor. And obviously it's a very serious matter, and it's not something that should be just casually thrown around like that. Um, but I wish that there was a system with these kids and with these parents that you could just sit them down and like, hey, like this is becoming a big problem. Like there shouldn't be kids just casually telling other kids to kill themselves. Like that's just not okay. And I feel like we're in an age where most parents, well, I don't want to say most, some parent, like a handful of parents will use electronics to babysit their kids. They're not raising their kids. They're just like buy them a tablet and, you know, go be happy on your damn tablet. And I wish more than anything, kids kind of grew up the way we did. You know, everything was learned the hard way. You know, obviously, I don't condone abuse and anything like I went through, but I just wish that there was more discipline in the households or a two-parent household in most of these kids' homes, because I feel like again, that's another thing. It's very, very normalized to have a one parent household now, and I absolutely hate that for kids.
Absolutely. And if you're missing the motherly side, like, you know, the normalcy thing, I say normalcy, you have the loving mother, and then you also have the dad who is supposed to be the, you know, the disciplinarian or the, you know, stuff like that. But when you take one out of the picture, it's like, well, shit, like sometimes I can do what I want and sometimes this and that. But I agree with you with the tablet thing too. I mean, my daughter has one, but she's not on it for 3-4 hours just to so you can sit down and be on your phone and chill with that. See, in our day, like you and I, we didn't have that shit. We didn't have tablets. We didn't have these things. And I'm sure they're yeah, we had Segas and stuff. But we didn't have that stuff. And, you know, these kids are doing some really messed up things. Social media is their killer for these kids. And especially, you know, it's not even kids are picking on each other anymore in person. They're doing it on their phones.
Yeah. Cyberbullying is really bad, man. I don't think I've ever experienced anything quite like cyberbullying.
Right.
I've had my family targeted. I've had my late brother targeted. It's insane on the internet. And it's one of those things where, yeah, you gotta have thick skin, but at the same time, it's like you gotta be really, really careful with what communities you involve yourself in. Like the people that I've gotten targeted by are wrestling fans, and they're vicious, man. And I've heard the same about NBA fans. I've heard the same about NFL fans. Like sports fans are, part of my French, fucking insane.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Hockey is a big one for me.
Yeah.
Not even MMA. I posted something, I want to say 2 years ago, and the topic line of what my thing said, they're like, well, I disagree. This guy was way better. What the fuck were you thinking? And it's like, bro, it's not your
Just
show.
have an opinion, bro.
If you give me more views, that view has like 15,000 views right now. Like, I don't care about the views, but like, if you want me to shut the comments off, I don't care, but it's not going to bother me. Like, bro, like this is a fun thing. You like, are you mad because you can't make content yourself?
Yeah, man. It's crazy to me that, you know, one of the biggest stigmas that I have faced myself as a podcaster and mental health advocate is I'm not allowed to have an opinion about anything because I'm a mental health advocate. That's how I've been treated. If I disagree on a wrestler's stance on something, if I don't like them as a person or like them as a character, whatever. Oh, you call yourself a mental health advocate, blah, 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 blah. It's like, bro, like, I can have an opinion. I don't know if you guys realize this or not. Like, I don't have to be a straight arrow 24 freaking 7. I'm going to have an opinion about things.
Right.
Am I going to talk about controversial stuff? Probably not. But I'm going to speak my opinion on things I don't agree with.
Right. And that's a problem with society now, is you really got to watch what you say. And it's unfortunate because, you know, the 50s and 60s, they were somewhat racial. The Vietnam era,
I was going to say, very cutthroat.
Very, very bad. Even up to at least the 90s. It wasn't until the late I have to say it wasn't until the later 2000s that it started to get really, really bad.
I want to say right when Twitter started coming around was when it got really bad, because then everybody, whether it was a politician or it was just some content creator, they would just insert their opinion, and their opinion is automatically better than everybody else. It's
Yeah.
the people I have encountered on social media over the last couple of years are just fucking insane. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answer to solving any of it, because I feel like every day it gets worse. And back to our earlier conversation with the mental health terminology, all of those words get thrown around so hard they become buzzwords and they're losing their definition. Like, how many times I've heard the word gaslight, and just this year alone, I just learned this word last year. I didn't know what gaslighting was until last year. And then all of a sudden, everybody's using the damn word gaslighting. Um, I disagreed with somebody on a wrestling opinion they had, and they're like, "Oh, stop gaslighting me." I'm like, "Do you even know what that word means? Like, that's not gaslighting you, bro." Or the word narcissist. That's another fun one because everybody loves to use that word. Um, and a conversation I had with my brother and his girlfriend when we were driving was about false allegations, and how the system is like super hardcore on men when it comes to the SA allegations. Obviously there are more cases that are reported that, yeah, the man did it and he's a scumbag, whatever, right? And it's not talked about enough when the false allegations are put out there. The system is so against men, and there's no consequences for the other side, that you have guys coming out 14 years in prison for something they didn't do because the woman owned up to it. Or like that football player. Was he a football player? I don't remember his name, but he was dealing with allegations for 2 years just to find a public conversation that the girl who accused him was saying that she's going to get that bag, and she's going to make sure that he gets in trouble for SA, even if he didn't touch her or anything like that. And it's just the mentality of today's society is, I hate saying the word, crazy. It doesn't seem like it's going to get any better, but guys like you and I, or guys like Sean, Caitlin, Judy, whoever, it's so hard getting that message out there, man, that there are people fighting to get rid of this stigma around this damn community, man. But every day I feel like that battle gets harder.
And it does. And I mean, I'll use this as an example because I think it's terrible. I I I will say I've seen Britney Spears and her new shit that she's doing. Very, very troublesome to me,
Yeah.
because you're looking at it a mental health standpoint, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, like she's playing with knives and shit." And like, listen, she has problems. Absolutely. It's not the crush Britney Spears that we all remember, like with the high school and all fun and games and stuff like that. Now it's like she looks like demonic.
Yeah,
I
I
want to
agree.
say, like it's like like she was so scarred from her parent, or especially her dad, and people don't understand. Like they think it's a joke, and it's like she's trying to better herself, but do you ever see a picture with her kids? Do you ever see a picture with her and her boyfriend?
Right.
No, you see her doing this crazy ass dancing and bullshit. Like, by all means, I really do think, I hope she gets help, but that's just one prime example of the society looking at it as a joke instead of a
Under a
serious thing.
microscope, bro. Like everything that she does, it's all over the internet. And I don't know enough about the situation with her and her dad to really make an opinion on the matter. But um I just feel like ever since that whole thing, was resolved or whatever between her and her dad, I feel like she just went off the rails. Um,
Oh yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he was right. I don't know if she was right about the situation. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have an opinion on the matter. Um, yes, we grew up with her. She was a lot of crushes for a lot of young men.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And I just feel like it's one of those things that I don't care to look enough into, just for the fact that,
Right.
again, we're talking about the fan base conversation. That fan base is so toxic that you say one wrong word, it's like, oh my God, you're this, and this. I'm like, bro, I don't understand why you guys get upset. Like, we're just offering our opinion just like you are. Whether you would disagree with it or not, that's up to you. But it shouldn't come down to name calling. It shouldn't come down to doxing somebody off the internet or targeting somebody's family. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's just one of those situations, man, where if you don't know enough about it, not to comment on. And her situation, I don't know who's in the right. I don't know if her dad was in the right because
Yeah,
how off the
yeah.
rails she is. Um, and I agree with you, man. I hope she gets the help the help that she deserves, because it's definitely worrisome to see how crazy the internet is about the things that she's doing.
And again, that's our problem. Like if you look back in her heyday around that time, again, no Twitter, no Facebook, no nothing. Maybe MySpace, I don't remember.
I think
Um,
MySpace came around like 2006, something like that.
yeah, so um with her, it's like, again, I don't know the whole situation either, but um my last thing about it is like, man, just get help, girl. Like, that's what I'm saying. And you don't have to go through your dad. You don't, like, you can do it yourself, or maybe your spouse or ex can help you, like whatever. But it's not just her, it's all people around now. But
Yep.
like, to really find out if Britney Spears had something wrong back in the day, you had to get the old newspaper.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then TMZ came around, and that whole dynamic changed everything and how we get celebrity news. It's heartbreaking stuff, man. So let's jump back a little bit into your journey here. So since we talked last, we you told your story and the trials and tribulations and stuff that you've gone through, right? Um, and you had messaged me the other day asking me about therapy. And I think it's important to bring up this conversation in every podcast, because I think, and I'm pretty sure you do too, how important therapy is and how impactful it can be. Um, like we mentioned before we started recording, we both experienced outpatient therapy. How old were you when you did your outpatient therapy again?
Um, Geez. Actually, I was exactly 30.
Okay. So I was about 14, and I got paired up with a counselor who only dealt with gambling addiction. So I don't really understand why I was paired up with her, because it was after a suicide attempt. And it's one of those things where it puts that really bad mindset into your being that, oh, therapy looks like this, they're not going to help me, they just want to give me medication, they just, they don't want to help me, they're not looking out for my best interest. And that was me for the longest time, because of my mom wanted me to go to therapy when I was younger. And while she may have had good intentions, the person it was coming from, it didn't come off that way, because
Mhm.
most of, if not all, my trauma has come from her. And for her to sit there and tell me when I was a minor that, I should go to therapy, what's to say that she wouldn't, bullshit everything to the therapist that was talking to me at the time, and, sit there and tell me that I have problems that I don't, and put me on medication that I don't want to be on. You know what I mean? And um, again, I myself am not for medication. I don't believe in it, but there are some people that need it. Absolutely. Um, so how has therapy benefited you? And, I guess just as a man, do you think that therapy has changed your life?
So I I've been in and out of therapy since I was 13 years old. My mother said I had an anger issue, and I did. I was punching walls, I was doing stupid shit like that. that's where the journey started. I had a really, really good one, and he retired. And I always was chasing that dream that I would find that therapist. And it, for a very long time, it didn't happen until my recent one that's been great since. So that's 5 years I've been with this therapist, 5 years, which is very hard to find.
Absolutely.
Um, Therapy has been a blessing in disguise. And for myself, I would recommend it. And I said it in our last talk was don't try to go for the first one. You may need to go through 7 or maybe 2, or you might get lucky. But it's been a savior. But I will say to people, like, there's different type of therapists, and there's ones that are gonna really not test you, but really go to your inner self, to
Right.
where you're in the present, but unexpectedly you found a moment in time that you didn't even know that was bothering you until that point that could have contributed to that. And it's very intense sometimes, and you could get maybe into tears or whatever. And but it's worth it. It gets all the demons and all the bullshit out of you. It really helps a lot. And for people that say, "Oh, well, I don't need that," like, maybe you don't. Like, that's fine. But for me, it helps. And if I could, I absolutely 100% recommend therapy to whatever you're going through. Or you know it could be for any type of thing. And usually they're about 45 minutes to an hour. If you can't take 45 minutes to an hour just to talk to somebody to help you, then again, that's on you. But that hour or 45 minutes for every 2 weeks helps me tremendously. It
Right.
helped me through my 2 weeks that happened to me.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot there that you said that I 100, probably 1,000% agree with, man. One of the most important points you made is sometimes the first therapist you find isn't going to be the one for you, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have had a total of 3 therapists in my life, and the one I had in Jersey was great. But unfortunately, I left New Jersey because of circumstances up there with my mom. Then I came back down to Florida, and I found a therapist that one of my friends had recommended the clinic. She didn't write anything down. She didn't help me through my first panic attack, nothing. The second session we had, she asked me, she's like, "Oh, would you take medication?" Like, it was just it came off as one of those things where if she gets me medication, then she'll get paid. And it's one of those things where it's like,
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
yeah. And there's a lot of doctors like that. There's a lot of physicians, therapists, and it's so disheartening because that was almost a soul crushing experience for me because I had such a good experience in Jersey, right? And coming back down to Florida, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go to therapy again. Therapy was amazing to me, and I had that experience, and I almost completely gave up on myself, man. And my second therapist that I have now, or third therapist technically, I guess, I've been with her for 3 years. And prior to finding her, NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness Foundation, they had a representative come in and talk about therapy and talk about mental health and stuff. This is around the time when I first was with the company, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be really good. I'm gonna ask him questions, and I waited until after the meeting and everything because as a guy, it's weird to put the spotlight on yourself when it comes to stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that because that's
Yeah.
stigma in society for men. Um, and I asked him, like, hey man, like, I had a really bad experience with a therapist, and I know I need to go back. Like, I was going through some of the worst possible times that I could go through at the time. I mean, this is like just before the pandemic. And he's like, all you have to do is, when you're looking for a therapist, you have that conversation with them about setting up a meeting. You ask them questions. What kind of therapy do they cover? Do they have a sliding scale? Do they offer medication? Simple questions like that. And like you said, it could take 7 tries to find that perfect therapist. And
Mm-hmm.
right before I found Jess, I had lost 2 people. One that was really well. Both of them are really important to me, but one that was really close to my heart, Amy, had passed away in July. And then the day before I started therapy, I lost a friend who was a coworker, who was absolutely one of the most outstanding human beings to me that I've ever met. And she passed away the day before I was going to start therapy. So I was a wreck. And this is right in the middle of the pandemic. So we couldn't do person to person like I was used to, and I was very unsure about how therapy would be going to be. I was so down on myself about it. I'm like, man, this isn't going to work out because I'm more of I need somebody here and have a conversation with, face to face. I'm not going to feel any emotion or anything like that. She made me feel more comfortable than anybody has that I've ever met in my life. Our first session, I cried my eyes out about Amy and Lynn, and up until now, man, I've made so much progress since I first met Jess. I started the podcast. I about to go on a podcast for the company that I work in to talk about men's mental health, things like that. And guys, for all the listeners, man, this is just a little bit of what therapy can do for you. You've heard it from Matt, you've heard it from myself. Therapy is the greatest experience that I've ever had in my entire life, and that goes for anything I've done. The thing about therapy too, you have to be willing to do the work. It's not Therapy is not just for you to vent. It is for that, but it's not just for that. You have to be willing to, like you said, challenge yourself and look inside yourself and be like, okay, I could do this differently and I could do this differently and honor my boundaries. What's that? Honor my inner child. What's that? Therapy teaches you all those things. And man, I've helped people find therapists and they say every day how great their therapy sessions are going. And like yourself, you've been with your therapist for 5 years. And I feel like it's really hard to find genuine people in this community that are willing to
100%.
stick by their clients and support them as hardcore as they do, man. And I'm more than happy to hear that another man is in therapy and has been for that long, man, because it's not talked about nearly enough how important therapists are to this society.
And it's true. I mean, I could have gave up on it a long time ago after, well, this was when I was leading up to getting sick. This guy, his first thing was he wanted me to sign the the thing, the call people up, like
Okay.
mandatory reporter.
Okay.
And I was like, you're giving me this paper the first time you meet me? Like, I thought that was bullshit. Then there was a lady I had for one session, and I said, oh yeah, I have this. And then she looked it up in a medical dictionary and she says, yep, you have that. I was like, all right, so you're gone. Like, it was a
You looked
craziest
in the
thing.
dictionary?
A medical dictionary, and says, oh yeah, the definition, yes, you have depression. I'm like, see the fuck later. Like, like,
What?
oh, I was like, oh my
That is the
God.
craziest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, it was nuts. It was insane. I was like, lady, I'm done with you. Like, this has been the worst. Then I saw her grocery shopping. The next time I saw her, she was grocery shopping. She didn't even know the fuck I was. And I was like, yeah, you're a great therapist. So after that, like, I took a break for a while and then I got sick. And then I found this one, 5 years, and the trust is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, the work is very important. If you're not willing to work and, treat it as, there's a stigma about it. Like, if you go to a therapist, you're weak. Nah, not even the case at all.
Right.
You're stronger for bettering yourself. For me, in the present, like, I wouldn't be able to take care of my daughter if I didn't have I'm blessed because I have pretty much all the tools I need to get to where I need to be, but you have to work. And and I realized, and this is a crazy thing, this kind of hit me actually, this happened at a session where it's like, you know what? Like, this is a mental health issue, and then this is life. Something happens to you in life, it's life. Like, for
The most
example, like you
important
get in
thing
a
I've
fight.
ever heard is life happens for you, not to you.
I agree with that 100%. And, like life, like if you get in a fight with somebody, that's life. If you get mad at them after, that's life. But if you're on the line of like, oh, I'm having a mental breakdown, or my like your anxiety's through the roof, or that could be a mental health thing. But um yeah, man, I mean, it's you learn as you go, but you got to put in the work.
Absolutely, man. So let me ask you this, because I know everybody took the pandemic differently. How was therapy for you during the pandemic?
um
Was it more or less the
well,
same, or was it really challenging because of just how hard scheduling was, or how hard it was just to see somebody face to face, if that was even a possibility? Talk about those challenges if you had any.
so as crazy as it sounds, the pandemic did not bother me as something like like for me. It's like my one of my parents said, "Well, I don't get how you're dealing with this right now," and I'm like, "It's here, like it's something that's happening." But as I diverse with my therapist, I'm lucky. She always has time for me, always. And it was through this. It was through Zoom, our 45-minute sessions or an hour. And it was great because I still had that help.
Right.
I was fortunate. I heard some therapists said, "Oh well, I can't do this when the pandemic slows down," because they didn't think to, hey, we could go through Zoom, we could go through Skype, we could. So I was fortunate. I don't know about what with you during that time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I was talking about. It was supposed to be a face to face interaction. I was supposed to go to her office, um, and this is right as the pandemic we're in the middle of it, and I believe she was moving to Orlando, and then also just add the pandemic on top of that. So it was one of those things I was unsure about, because I feel the same way about text messages sometimes, man. It's just like you can't uh you can't capsulate how much emotion is in a face to face compared to what is in a text message.
100% agree with that.
And that's one of the reasons I didn't want to do a Zoom call, or the video chat that her and I do, was because of that, because I'm such a socially interactive person. But when the pandemic hit, that completely changed. Like, the social anxiety is now a thing. I've never had social anxiety in my entire life. Now, when I go to grocery stores, dude, I barely look up. Like, I don't look at people. I don't talk to people in the grocery store. Like, it's fucking weird. And I've always been a person to talk to strangers about shit. Like, if I'm going to see a sunset and be like, oh yeah, it's a really nice sunset tonight, right? And I even as a kid, I always made friends with people that I didn't know, and obviously that's how we make friends. But with the pandemic, my first concert was awkward as fuck after the pandemic. First WrestleMania was awkward as fuck in the pandemic. Like, um, being around so many people now, it's you don't know what people are capable of because all the craziness that's going on right now, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they passed that constitutional carry here in Florida, and people can have a gun on them without a concealed. And while I don't disagree with it, it's one of those things you got to have in the back of your head, man. If you bump into this person, or you, you know, say the wrong thing, are they going to turn around and shoot you down? I don't think it's going to happen like that, because I don't live in a state where it's like that. But it's always in the back of your mind. You don't know what people are capable of after this pandemic. And when I went to my first concert, um, I remember we were in the House of Blues in Orlando, and it's only standing room. So I was sitting there standing for 5 hours in the same place, shoulder to shoulder around so many damn people, and we had
I
to
know
wear
that
a
House of
mask.
Blues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we had to wear a mask. And I'm like, bro, I cannot breathe. There are so many people around me and all this body heat and shit, and you have to wear a mask, and I got a damn beard. Like it was horrible. So I took it off for like 5 minutes just so I can breathe. And I look around, everybody's still wearing a mask, and I started freaking out a little bit. I'm like, fuck, is the media getting in my head? Am I gonna get sick? Am I gonna die? It's those little things that the media peddles and that social media peddles is, oh, you're gonna go to the grocery store and you're gonna die because of COVID. It's I don't get sick, and I the only time I ever get sick is because of allergies. I don't get sick. I didn't get COVID, knock on wood. I I don't really get colds, but it's one of those things that the things that are peddled on the media and the things that are peddled on social media, man, it gets in your head sometimes, and you don't realize it until you're in a social setting where it's like, shit, this person's coughing. Do they have COVID? You know what I mean?
I think the biggest problem during the pandemic that really fucked everybody up, and a lot of people were at home and all that shit, the liquor stores were still fucking open. All of them. So if you didn't have anxiety or depression then, you were drinking that shit. You were drinking anxiety and depression. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like that in grocery stores, man. And for all the worry, and I mean the the toilet paper scandal, like it was just a weird time. And now it's like I feel like there's still a bunker full of fucking toilet paper somewhere.
Right. and it's crazy to me how politicians acted during that time, and how grocery stores and corporations acted at that time, because we had to literally readjust our entire lives and our whole schedule and everything around working from home or homeschooling kids or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden we're supposed to just readjust outside of that mentality. And these corporations don't realize, like, you had us inside for 3 years, and now you expect all of a sudden to everybody to just comply and switch back over to everything how it was. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
But yeah, man, it's the therapy thing. It saved my life, and of course there's
Same with
obviously the
me.
work.
Same
Yeah.
with me.
And obviously it's the work that you and I did, man. And I think I may have asked you this in our first recording, and if I didn't, but is your therapist a guy or a girl?
A woman.
So
More comfortable with the woman. More
okay, so
comfortable.
it's not just me, right? I remember when I had a conversation with one of my friends when I first started therapy. Oh, why don't you get a guy therapist? I'm like, bro, I don't want that silent judgment from another man who's a therapist. I don't trust 90% of the things that I'm internally battling to be spoken to a man. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, you and I are friends, so it's not the same thing. But
Right.
you're talking to a professional who is a therapist, has an unbiased outlook on all the things you're going through. I don't feel comfortable with the fact that I'm talking to another man, because in the back of his mind is he saying all the shit that was said to you as a kid, like, oh, man up, or oh, stop being a pussy, stop this, stop that. um and I know therapists don't talk to their clients like that, but it's the what we've been through growing up that completely deters me away from talking to a guy about this stuff.
And I agree, just because I had one at one time, and I had the same stigma, except it was roles reversed. I was like, how the fuck is this nerdy guy gonna teach me how to do all this shit? And then like he had his leg crossed like he was sitting at the beach and like writing this shit down, and I'm like,
Make you feel
yeah, I'm like, bro, like I don't go for that. Like with
right,
a woman, it's just more comfortable. It's like I don't want to say a motherly figure, but like they relate to what we're going through
right,
better than a man would, because I've dealt with both.
Mm.
And the woman is more, and she is the greatest person ever, man. I tell you. And like, she's to the point where she's so nice, and I'm so privileged that and spoiled kind of that she texted me the day before and said, see you tomorrow at 12. Like not a lot of therapists do that shit.
Yeah, man. And with my therapist, she listens to my podcast actively. Like she listens to every single episode and she gives me feedback on every single one. And it's not just like it's not feedback where it's like, oh, this was a great episode. It's never that cut dry. It's always, I love that you talked about this. I think it's super important that you brought up this. And then she'll talk about the guest too. And, I've expressed to her how much her support means to me. And in a world or in a community where that support isn't very strong, and I say this because the social media algorithm, for those of you who aren't aware of what I'm speaking on, the social media algorithm for mental health is so low that 9 times out of 10 you're not going to scroll past a mental health related thing on TikTok. You're 9 times out of 10 not going to see it on Instagram. You sure as hell won't find it on Facebook because Facebook buries a lot of posts. And you can post about this great accomplishment, this great thing that's going on in your life, and it'll get 1-2 likes. The likes aren't important, but I just want to put this in perspective for you guys. Then you have somebody who will post a picture of their ass, a gorgeous woman with her ass hanging out or whatever, and it'll get 400 likes immediately. And that's not a dig on that woman, flaunt what you got, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, mental health doesn't matter on a social media platform as much as it should. And it's so hard to make content for mental health communities because you put in so much work and it kind of feels like you're beating your head against the wall. How many times do we have to see a woman bashing a man on social media? And how many times are we going to see a man bashing a woman on social media and you can't respond because it's considered bullying or it's considered hateful speech when you're just telling it like it is, and they allow hateful responses, but they don't allow replies that can be passive. I've had videos taken down on my TikTok for hateful and bullying content because you're telling it like it is. Like there was a video
100%.
There was a video of a woman shaming a man for being in a wheelchair because he asked her out on a date. She is sitting there saying, oh, show me that you can run, show me that you can walk, and this man's just in public in a wheelchair.
Wow.
And she's just sitting there shaming him. And I responded to it. I'm like, it makes me sick that people who are in her circle or whatever don't take her out of that situation immediately because that man did not deserve that. And my video got taken down for bullying, and I didn't bully her at all. I just said I genuinely hope that doesn't happen to her because that's fucked up. You don't say things like that to handicapped people. I'm sorry. And it got taken down, and it's things like that, man. You can't talk about taboo subjects on social media platforms without it getting taken down, man. Like if I were to make a video right now on TikTok about suicide awareness, 9 times out of 10 it wouldn't reach your feed unless you followed me and have notifications on. And it's like that for Facebook. It's like that for Instagram. The algorithm is so damn small that we're fighting against a brick wall is what it is. And it's
the biggest problem is everybody like in the social media world that did like somewhat the mental health or has this feeling of mental health, they all do the fucking, and I don't have a problem, but Dr. Drew, they think he's the fucking savior of everybody because he saved Dr. Drew, the guy who does love therapy and trauma, all that stuff. He had all these shows and shit. And then there's like Dr. Oz, like that. Like I'm just, like it's like he's like the Joe Rogan of like certain therapies and stuff like that. And it's a stigma. Like, people will go off of his opinion, but ordinary people like us, it's like, well, they're just spewing out stuff. It's like,
Right.
no, if you really heard the fucking story, like, you would understand. And this is nothing towards anybody who does, like, speeches at conferences, or mental health conferences or anything like that. But, like, hear Chris's story, hear Matt's story, feel a genuine story of what we fucking went through, what we're dealing through now. See that and see what happens with people. Not
And
that I
that's
want to flaunt my story. It's just,
right.
I'm saying, like, show it from real people.
Yeah, man. And that's the thing too, is it's so hard to be raw in a world that doesn't want to hear what you went through. Like, yes, everybody has their problems, but we need to talk about those problems. We don't just say, oh, well, get over it. Everybody else has problems. It doesn't work that way. That's like
Mhm.
saying you can't be happy because other people have it better than you. And I say that every single time. People are like, oh, well, at least it's not this. I'm like, that doesn't make what I'm going through any less, because it's not that. And I feel like so many people are so comfortable with undermining people's struggles that when it comes to, like you just said, going to those conferences and telling our story, we have to fluff things. We can't talk about this. We can't say this word. And we basically have to polish a turd is what it comes down to. And
Yeah,
when it comes to this story that I want to tell at my job, I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm going to tell every detail that I went through. Obviously, I'm not going to be graphic and swear every 5 seconds in a work environment, but
of course.
it's going to be one of those things where I want people to understand what it was like growing up as a man in the 90s and early 2000s. Like, yeah, there are people in the world that have it a lot worse off than me. 100%. There are
Oh yeah.
sex
Hmm.
trafficking victims. There are people that got physically abused every day of their life, sexually abused, so on and so forth. But I went through my own trauma, and inspired, and not inspired, it manifested the trauma that I went through, and all the healing that I've done in the last couple of years. I've dug up so much shit that I didn't know was there. And I wish society would stop trying to push down people that are trying to speak up.
Absolutely. And there was one thing that happened a couple of months ago. I was trying to look for something up in my attic, and it was my medical stuff that I thought was gone from when I was an inpatient. So looked at it for 2 seconds, saw what the name of the hospital was, saw the name, my name, and I said, "Fuck it," put it in a fire pit outside, and I burned it. And I was like, yeah, that gave me closure a little bit. Like, sometimes you just gotta, like, move on. And that was just a case where I was like, immediately, I was like, screw this.
Yeah.
And it took a while to catch on fire because it rained the night before, but like, but yeah, I mean, some people
So
deal with their
essentially, it was like
stuff
a little
that
trigger, right?
it definitely 100% was a trigger. I even burned the folder, and the folder was hard to burn, man. And you know what I mean? Like, but it was in a controlled thing, and I just lit it up, and that was
Yeah.
it. That was it.
And
And it was satisfying to me that I that part of my life is now away.
yeah. So with last month being with September being suicide prevention month, when this episode airs, it'll be in November, and that's Men's Mental Health Month. Brings me to the question that I feel is one of the most important ones to ask. What does men's mental health mean to you? What does that month mean to you?
It is extremely important. Like I said, this is an everyday thing. There's months, there's days that are celebrated for different things, but men's health is important every day. And a month, yeah, we can celebrate it, and with men's health, it women have their own issues. I'm not saying that they don't go through stuff either, because they go through a lot of shit too. But like you said about the word taboo, mental health is taboo. Like they're like too honoring. Like, all right, I'm a man. Like like I don't need fucking therapy. I don't need to go inpatient. I don't need to go outpatient. I don't need to do any of that. I just live my life every day, and you know. But look at it this way: try, you know, crying every day because you don't know why. Try going to inpatient, bettering yourself, even though you went through hell. Withdraw through medications and better yourself. Go through the anxiety of be like you said, like I'll tell the story about that too, about with you having the social anxiety in the grocery store, how you have your head down and stuff like that. There was a point where I was in a Target for 5 minutes and I had to sit down and breathe. So all that shit, like I said, mental health, men's health, very important. It's like everything we've talked about, Chris, with you gotta do the work and don't give up. Like if you're just gonna stew, you want to be in a dark room. Right now I'm in a bright room. You're gonna watch TV. You're in I don't know about you with your past experience. Like I know you love wrestling. I don't know if you were looking at wrestling at one point. It's a thing you love, and you just stared at the TV, and it was just people wrestling. Like you didn't even.
That's how I felt
Had
in the
no.
pandemic, man. Yeah.
You had no emotion, just like me. Like you know, like I was watching stuff that like would make me laugh, and I just look at it like it's just a thing on a TV screen.
Right.
People don't need to stew. If you stew on it or you don't get help, your mental stage is going to be affected. You know, like I said, I've seen some horrible, horrible shit in inpatient, but I got through it. So it's like every day you're going to get your own little accomplishment without even knowing it. And again, men's mental health is very important. And I really wish that people would take the initiative and, I'm not saying this in a bad way, but don't just like when you stew, you may have a plan of how you're gonna take your life, or you're gonna hurt yourself, or whatever the case may be. You could prevent yourself from doing that. Whether I know you're not a medication person, I am. Just get the help you need. There's so many numbers, there's so many hotlines, there's so many tools that you can use now. It's just the work you need to do. I went through work that didn't fucking help me at all, like the outpatient we talk about. I think we both hate that a lot.
I think with outpatient therapy, I don't see it being very beneficial. And the reason I say that is, you go in there and then you're out. It's not one of those things where you're staying and you have to face yourself in the mirror every single day like inpatient does. Outpatient therapy is you're going in, you can leave whenever the hell you want. I don't like that. If you're suicidal, if you're mentally unwell, you shouldn't be in an outpatient therapy. It just doesn't. I don't see a benefit in outpatient therapy. Maybe it works for some people. And I just want to clarify on the medication conversation too. It's not that I'm completely against medication. I think my problem is there are way too many doctors and way too many therapists, way too many psychiatrists that rely on prescribing medication opposed to actually trying to help. I
agree with that too.
And one of my guests, Sid, says that she feels like most doctors want to treat the symptom and not the cause. And I think that's my forever outlook on medication, because it's just like, yes, some people may need medication just to get by because their brain doesn't produce what it needs to produce, and that's completely fine. But when you're trying to help somebody who just wants to better themselves and wants to put in the work to evolve their being and shed all that toxic skin that they have on them, the first initiative should not be, hey, I'm going to prescribe you this. It shouldn't be like that. And that's how this damn society is. And, for anybody of my listeners that does take medication, if it helps you, I'm happy for you. I'm not going to say you don't need it, but I'm against it because of big pharma. I don't like big pharma. I don't like how it's in everybody's pockets. And the sooner people realize that, I feel like we'll have a healthier society. That's why, in my opinion, that's why cancer has never found a cure. There is way too much money being made in the cancer industry. You're going to tell me with all this technology, all this research and stuff that we don't have a cure to cancer? Bullshit. They just want money. That's all it is.
And my thing is too with medication. And again, I have a good med prescriber. So with that, she gave me a blood test. This was before I went into inpatient. So what the blood test did was it listed every fucking medication there possibly is. I think we talked about this in the last show, and there was green light type of thing. Not saying gaslight. So green light, yellow, and red. Green obviously means this is the best for you. Orange means it's okay, but it may have the side effects. Red means don't take it. And what does inpatient do? Give me all the fucking red ones. So I agree with that. It's like, that's what I feel bad about with people in inpatient is they need different medication. They don't know better. They're just like, it's like a parent giving a kid M&Ms. Like, oh, here you go. This might help you. And you got guys that are paranoid schizophrenics and they're drinking fucking coffee.
Yeah.
Like it's all over the place. And, the medications are out of control for people that might need it for different reasons. Like,
right.
I don't like the big pharmas either. And I don't like how very serious diseases like can be cured, but they're not it's like, it's not being disclosed. And it's very upsetting to me as well. And, it is a cash thing, like, yep. You can't tell me fucking Pfizer made millions of dollars on that shit. Moderna made a shit ton of money. I took both shots and I still got fucking COVID. So it's like, excuse my language, but
it's fine. I've dropped a couple F-bombs.
It's making me mad now.
Yeah, no, I feel you, man.
But they're making all this money and people are still getting COVID because John Smith down the street has COVID. You walk by him, he gives you that breath, and then however it passes, you get COVID. So what were the shots for?
Right.
I rest my case on that.
Yeah, COVID's a tricky conversation, man. And again, it's one of those topics that I don't talk about because people don't want to hear the opposite of what they believe. There's evidence on more the shady end of how COVID went down, but like I said, we don't discuss it because there's no safe space to discuss how you feel about COVID, unfortunately, and just anything else for that matter. When I did this podcast, when I created the group, it was one of those things where I wanted to make sure that people can talk about their struggles and not have to worry about their family members judging them. Like when the group was first made, for example, it was public and, anybody could see it. And that was when I was still talking to my mom. My dad could see anything that posted in there, whatever. And then somebody's like, I think you would get more engagement if you made the group private. And as soon as I did that, people were starting to post all the time, would talk about all their struggles and everything they were going through. And then Facebook added the anonymous posting feature in there too. And it's probably one of the best features I've ever seen put on an app in my life, because I've seen more people post now than I saw when I first created the group in 2019.
And I see it, and you're doing an amazing job for people. I've seen the different things. I haven't seen the anonymous stuff, but the things you're saying to these people and doing for these people are just, I think it's amazing, man. And It's just good stuff. And I see that men are coming on there, and it's not just women, and it's good stuff. And it's good that you're putting out this content so they can physically see your face and talking to guests, and maybe they relate to me, maybe they relate to one of your other guests, and maybe that can change their lives. And that's what I love about coming on here, is there's no judge, and it's just all stuff that's important that people just don't think that they don't think that other people are going through the same thing you are.
Yeah, and that's one of the most important things about this podcast is I've had people message me saying that they're starting to take notes when they listen to my podcast, or my podcast help them. And all in all, that's really all I want to do, man, is help people. And sometimes I feel defeated because the Facebook algorithm will screw me over, or the podcast doesn't get as many listens as I'd like it to, or for example, when the Spotify ambassadorship got taken away from me, like it's there's a lot more defeating moments than there are great moments, but those great moments are tremendous, so it almost balances itself out. But like I said, man, I appreciate the fact that you stuck around for as long as you have, and you've supported me since we first met. And both podcasts, the last one and this one, I think are some of the best conversations I've had, because it's so hard to find people that are authentic, man. And it's even harder to find people that are willing to be raw and real with you when it comes to their story. So again, I thank you for being willing to come on here and share the vulnerable pieces of you as a man.
Appreciate it, man. The same to you. And you're a guest on my show.
Yeah, buddy.
We'll have to put that on the link of your you really impressed my producer with all your wrestling knowledge, man. It's absolutely crazy.
It's really funny. A couple weeks ago, I think it might have been last week, there was a storyline in wrestling going on, and I kind of wrote down how I thought it should be booked. Like, it makes sense for it to go this direction. And somebody replied, "Wow, you should be a writer." I'm like, bro, I've just been watching since I was like 7 years old. Like, I see things before they happen, and sometimes predictability isn't the worst thing, but when you see things that could be really great, depending on how it's booked and depending on how it's written, it always, my brain is always spinning, man. Whether it's movie quotes that are churning out of my mouth or it's wrestling talk, it's always in motion, man. So tell your producer the next time you talk to him that I greatly appreciate that.
I definitely will.
Because that was one of my favorite podcasts I've done, because wrestling is one of my biggest passions in life. So yeah, man. So before we wrap up and before we get to my quote, I just have one last question for you. What is one important lesson that you try to teach your daughter in terms of just life and her going through it?
Well, so the big thing is clean up your toys and clean up your clothes and all that stuff. No, but in life, man, just have fun, man. Just have fun. And like, when you go to school, make friends, like do all that fun stuff. She's in kindergarten now, so it's like, she's in the early stages. She's like, "Oh, I made a friend today." I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." But it's like, if you have kids, anybody out there, I'm sure with parents on here too, please don't let them just have them say, "How was school? Good." That's bullshit. You want more info. Like,
Yeah.
Like, you wish the teacher like had a synopsis of the day, and I'm like, but the biggest thing for my daughter is have fun, enjoy life, and just like whatever I can do to be the best at I can, I'm gonna do. And that's the greatest thing, because there were times in my life where I wasn't having fun. And you don't want to say, "Hey, your dad was fucking stupid when he was older." Hey, your dad, well, it will probably be, but you didn't have the best relationship with your grandfather, but we made it all work. Now your grandfather loves you to death and treats you like it's your kid. So it's like, I love that part of it more than the struggles I had before. So
Right.
I just wish her all the fun in the world. Well,
Yeah,
she's going to
man.
Disney next month. She'll have fun.
I definitely think it's important for parents to be more engaged in their kids' lives because for me, I didn't have that. It was always my mom looking for the next best relationship. And it was always my dad and I never connected on any level. So yeah, man, it's great to hear that you stay engaged in your daughter's life. And I think those are really important lessons. And for anybody listening, uh please always try to stay engaged with your kids. Obviously time goes really fast as we saw during the pandemic. Um, and even more so now when your kids are younger. So to anybody listening, like just to reiterate what Matt said, let your kids have fun and just be their authentic selves. Um, and just stay engaged with your kids, man. But before we wrap up, as you guys know, I like to read a quote based on
and
whatever.
before and before that, as parents, you have to be fun too. You
Yeah,
can't show the emotions like with you know, you and your wife just got in a fight, let it fucking go then. Your kid is going to notice that. They might be resentful. They might they might choose sides. Don't let that happen.
yeah,
Have fun too.
couldn't agree more. Um, so as you guys know, I'd like to read a quote based on whatever topic that I happen to be covering with my current guest. Today, I have a quote from Alex Karras, who is an athlete, and it reads: "It takes more courage to reveal insecurities than to hide them, more strength to relate to people than to dominate them, more quote unquote manhood to abide by thought out principles rather than blind reflex. Toughness is in the soul and spirit, not in muscles and an immature mind." I
That's a good
thought
one.
that was one of the most powerful quotes I've ever read because working out, there's a absolute benefit to working out, physical health, mental health, it all goes hand in hand. But if you're not taking care of your brain at the same time, you're not going to have, you got to have that balance. And I'm trying every day to keep that balance and improve my diet, improve my workout habits. And it's a challenge, man. It goes with the mental health struggles that we talked about. But before we wrap up here, Matt, where can everybody find you on your socials?
So I'm on Instagram. I have two pages at Maddie C23, Maddie being Mattiec, Maddie C Sports, and then Maddie 23, same thing. And then Facebook, Matt Cameron. Um, yeah, that's it. I don't know the other
What's your
one.
podcast name for our listeners?
Oh, and my show's Maddie C Sports. It show is most Sundays at 6 p.m. I usually post when they are and who I'm with. And I also want to say one more thing to everybody out there too, that I learned from um, a person I interviewed a couple years ago was to live in the present. The past is depression, future is anxiety. Just live in the present, and that's it.
I love that damn quote. Every time you say it, man, it's one of the best quotes I've ever heard. But again, thank you again so much for being on today, Matt. Um, for all my listeners, I know we're heading into the holiday season as well, so make sure to love each other and take care of each other the best that we can. Until next time, be well, and as always, be gentle.